Serious. People who used to be anti-LGBTQ+ but are now supportive. What changed your mind? Attention. Serious. Tag notice, jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit if you have any questions or concerns. I fell in love for the first time at 18, around the same time that my best friend came out as gay. Previously, I was honestly just a naive child who didn't understand the world. So I was passive about the issue and didn't understand why those people were so up in arms about their sexual orientation. I didn't feel strongly either way, but if I had to pick a side I'd say I chose the attitude of those around me, which was that these people were strange and too flamboyant. I agreed with my parents' vote on Prop 8 that marriage was between a man and a woman and anything else was unnatural. After I went off to college, I met my first boyfriend and fell hard. My friend called me up and came out to me tearfully. I remember I took the call with my boyfriend sitting next to me. I looked at him and it clicked that if anyone told me my love was anything other than right or I was barred from being with him I'd be devastated. So, that was it. I started to listen and recognize that treating anyone's feelings as lesser than mine was not only misguided, but it was damaging to those who had been told that they couldn't live in their own skin out in the world. Edit. I'm a straight cis female. I'll chime in with my answer. I was religious when I was younger and believed homosexuality was a sin. But the biggest reason I was a homophobe was that I thought all gay people were sex-crazed perverts that couldn't control themselves. This was because I was bullied when I was younger, and one running joke between some people in my school was to pretend they were gay and attracted to me. Basically, I thought the gays were out to get me, as I like to put it. With time I realized that gay people were mostly normal people who just wanted to live their lives. And I came to realize my initial perception of homosexuality was wrong. The unfortunate thing was that I did hold strong homophobic views when I was younger and expressed them to family and close friends. There was a girl I was very close friends with that I shared these opinions with, and we fell out of touch because I pursued her romantically when I was 18. 3 years later I found out she was lesbian. This was the biggest regret of my whole life, and I can't imagine how bad I must have made her feel about herself. Fortunately, I had the chance to apologize since she reached out to me a few months ago and she accepted my apology, though it broke my heart when she said she was happy I was accepting since she thought I wouldn't want to be friends with her after she came out. Recent ex-Mormon, was in it for 40 years. The amount of child suicides in Utah, where I live, among the LGBTQ+ community, and not just kids, and most of it is due to the harmful teachings in the Mormon cult. I'm a dad. I can't imagine the pain to learn of your child's suicide, and that most likely it would have been my past bigotry that fueled. Then I educated myself. Really tough to unwind the homophobia that I didn't want anything to do with, but was slowly indoctrinated into me. Fuck that cult. I now proudly fly an ally flag year-round outside my home in the heart of Mormon country. Lots of pride shit I wear often. It's gotten some of my conservative neighbors to take a second look and to start educating themselves. I'm sorry for what I said and did when I was Mormon. I now know better and am doing my best to be better. I was very anti-gay marriage. I was raised Mormon, so it was the environment and belief system I inherited. But one day I heard the story of a gay couple who had been together for decades and one of them had fallen ill. He was so ill he was incapacitated and not able to communicate his wishes for a treatment. The hospital contacted his family, whom he had been estranged from for decades, to decide on his medical care. His partner of multiple decades was excluded to the point of not even being allowed to visit him in the hospital because they had no legal relationship. Gay marriage was not legal at the time. I remember feeling so sad for both of them and seeing the blatant unfairness and how it would be much better if they could be legally married. That's the day I changed my mind on the question of gay marriage. Growing up, I was in a very religious family, and my parents were very traditional Christians. They put me in a Christian private school my entire kindergarten 12th grade education, having me attend church Wednesday nights, Sundays, and chapel at school, having the Bible shoved down my throat and being surrounded by others in the same situation. We were all told while growing up that being gay was a sin. The school I attended had all students sign a contract, basically saying that we would not be gay, and if we were, we would not act on it. My senior year of high school, I became really close friends to a girl a couple of grades under me, and she told me she was gay and had a GF of a couple of years. She had revealed to me that she had tried conversion therapy, and had been to a Christian counselor as well. She eventually was kicked out of our private school for having a girlfriend. After that all happened, and having one of my closest friends kicked out of my Christian We Love All school, it made me realize that being gay isn't the sin, but not showing love to others is the sin. One of the big things that I was told growing up was the gay agenda, and how LGBTQ+ people are trying to convince other people to become LGBTQ+ by corrupting people. It was the reason they had pride parades, and it was the reason why evil Hollywood wanted to have gay characters in their show. It's also why you couldn't just leave people alone to be happy. You had to actively be against it, since them being gay is affecting you and your children if you don't do something about it. I believe this pretty much 100% until I actually started meeting gay people. During middle school there was really only one gay guy we knew of, and he was a really strange person, which didn't help. During high school though, friends of mine started coming out as gay, and I usually ended up talking to at least one gay person a day. I realized they were just normal people, and not only that, but they were good people. They weren't there to convince anyone else to be gay. They were just trying to live a life where they could be happy. Edit. Holy shit, it's not until I wrote this that I realized my parents have been conspiracy theorists my entire life, and not just with recent events. I was in a similar boat because I thought marriage was primarily a traditional religious ceremony similar to a baptism or communion, in which case let them, religious organizations, keep their marriage definition and just have your own equivalent. But then it was pointed out to me that marriage was recognized as a social/political/economical institution long before religion had anything to do with it. Facts are facts, and to me that means religious organizations have absolutely no claim or say in what constitutes as marriage. Same here, except with a different background. Honestly, just exposure on its own will do it. There's only so much hate you can feel towards someone until you start wondering how arbitrary it is. Interacting with people helps to actually view them as people rather than abstract concepts representing what I was told was a bad thing in a vacuum. And in my case as well, it was due to growing up in an environment where it was just one of those life axioms that you just accept as gospel. Although, I do have to say that I'm less quick to judge hateful people as bad people, because from my experience seeing people close to me, and knowing they're genuinely nice people, that hate can be their good intentions going through the lens of what they view as being right and wrong, and without having direct exposure to those people to second guess it. I was raised Mormon. My parents weren't the hateful type at all, so I wouldn't describe myself as aggressively anti-LGBTQ+. I was raised to treat people with kindness and never name call or be cruel, but I did think that homosexuality was a sin. Even if I thought that we are all sinners and it wasn't my place to judge, I still realized looking back how toxic that was. I started questioning that in high school and college, that it didn't seem right for loving someone to be a sin. And I strongly opposed the church's support of Prop 8. That was the beginning of the end of my church membership, though it did take several years for me to really cut the cord. I can't really pinpoint the specific thing that changed my mind, partly because I never really felt hate or disgust towards LGBTQ+ people. I think it was a mixture of growing up and getting a better understanding of sexuality in general, and also witnessing the more vitriolic homophobia. I was pretty sheltered growing up, So once I realized all of the awful things that LGBTQ plus people have to endure, I realized that I didn't want anything remotely to do with that. I wouldn't characterize that as late, but perhaps it's just because I have a similar story to yours. I grew up in a very conservative religious family, and like you parroted a lot of what I heard, and just like you, around age 14 I started thinking more for myself and questioning the things I'd been brought up on. Eventually at 18 I left religion altogether, and over the years since I've swung very far left economically and socially. Lucky for me, the rest of my nuclear family started shifting in that direction later on. They're still religious, but they've given up on organized religion. I think 14 is probably around the time your brain becomes developed enough to start forming your own opinion on complex issues rather than just reiterating what you've heard at home. Even when I was a dumb teenager in the 80s I thought hating people for being gay was wrong, but I was still typically homophobic. By my late teens I had a friend who was bisexual, and, though he technically wasn't out, everybody knew. I got over my fear of gay people hitting on me, but I essentially had two circles of friends, and I definitely didn't want my head-banging friends to know I sometimes hung out with Scotty and the clique of goth kids he was part of. Things changed around 96 when I started hanging with people in the city I worked at instead of the people in the small town I lived in. In 98 I had a gay boss I was friends with and would hang out with him after work at a gay bar. Around then I stopped wanting to be friends with homophobic people. By the time I had gay kids, I was well prepared for it. Good thing, none of the three are completely heterosexual, though the oldest has been in a hetero relationship for 5 years. Middle child is ace, leaning gay, youngest came out as pan last year. Was born and raised Catholic. My family is quietly homophobic, until drink gets involved. Because of those two factors I was very anti-LGBTQ+ until my late teens. At that time I had started to take a critical look at my religion and beliefs and slowly became an atheist, and when I realized there is no secular arguments against LGBTQ+ and that it is part of nature, that part slowly slipped away as well. Now into my 30s and I am now an out bisexual. Took me so long because I believe I still have some religious trauma syndrome that stopped me accepting who I really am for a long time, and I am finally at a point where I can look inward and have a good look at myself and figure out who and what I am, and I didn't want to come out until I was sure of it. Having said that, not 100% on my gender identity. I am a but I have never felt like a man, nor have I felt like a woman, so I may be and be, but with slightly male leanings. But I have no idea what to call myself. There are a lot of different things and it can get confusing. When I was in my late teens early 20s I commented that I didn't think LGBTQ+ should be allowed to get married. Two friends of mine laughed at my own stupidity, then gently asked why I thought that. It genuinely stumped me, and I realized it was more a thought that I was taught rather than my own thoughts and feelings. I realized I had no reason to not allow two people that love each other to get married. Yeah, I was a dumb kid, but one thing I'll never forget was how my friends didn't make me feel stupid. They just asked questions and listened to my responses, then asked more questions. Thanks Tash and Pat. Regarding the transgender community, not so much anti, more ignorant to it. Actually, it wasn't until the whole J.K. Rowling situation last year did I sit up and take notice. My knee-jerk reaction was to agree full-heartedly with her. But then, I went onto Twitter, but a cesspit seriously, and started to read different people's opinions. Then I started to Google about transgender people. The problem was I wasn't being empathetic. I never tried to imagine what it was like for a person who didn't belong in their body. The more I read into it, the more I support trans people. I know that everyone hates JK for what she said, but she has brought light onto a situation, probably in the worst way, and made me more open-minded than I was previously. Transgender people must go through hell and back on their journey, and they have my absolute respect. As for the LGBT community, I grew up in a very conservative family and I didn't know anyone who was openly gay. It wasn't until I had moved out and explored the world a little bit more did I consider it normal. Now, I can't believe the community is still getting hate all these years later. My 8-year-old son doesn't even question it when he sees a lesbian, gay couple of TV. It's just normal to him, and that's the way it will stay. I'm so glad it's normal to you now. I was in the same boat. I didn't hate, but I also didn't fully understand. I had a few friends that were gay, but I didn't understand the trans men and women. Then I met a woman that was very open about her transition, and it really opened my eyes. I know not everyone who transitions is comfortable with taking about the whole process, but she is happy to talk about it in the hopes that taking about it will make it more normal for others struggling. She really opened my eyes about something I genuinely didn't understand, and I'm so thankful for her being that open about it. I reached out to her to ask if it was okay to share her story with my kid about how Andy Y was born in the wrong body as a boy, but was always Andy Y. My kid's response was just to say that she's glad Andy Y is her true self and that she's very pretty. Sorry for the long story. It just makes me happy reading that other parents overcame their misunderstanding and chose to raise the next generation with a better understanding than we had. The furry community. It's very open and accepting, so a significant portion is LGBTQ+. A survey some years ago showed an even split between gay, straight, and bi. A few months of lurking introduced me to a lot of gay, trans, etc. people, and I quickly realized that they were all just people. They weren't disgusting perverts, or pushing some nefarious agenda, or part of some vast leftist conspiracy like my parents had told me. They were just people who wanted to be free to live and love and creatively celebrate their weird obsession with cute fluffy animal people. I also saw how they suffered. Read story after story of the discrimination, rejection, and abuse they faced. Cried at the news that another of us had taken their own life because their family could love the son they wanted but not the daughter they had. It was in this moment that I decided it didn't matter whether the church or my family were right, be they God or man. No parent should ever drive their children to suicide. Growing up, my mom was very unsympathetic towards the entire LGBTQ+ community. Not so much gays are awful people and will burn in hell, but more along the lines of gay people are just confused, don't bother them and they won't bother you. This attitude of pretend gay people don't exist became engraved in my mind, along with the huge, and frankly somewhat harmful, idea of heteronormativity. Everyone is straight, and that's that. Right? At 17, I finally realized I was gay. I started dating this girl at school, and we had a pretty great relationship. We kept it mostly secret. It was the 90s, but it was good. It took until I was 21 to finally come out to my mom. She thought I would grow out of it. I did not. We got in a big argument, and, long story short, she hates me to this day, and no longer sees me anymore. I have a much better relationship with my in-laws. Her parents are supportive and sweet, and that's all I really need. I was raised very religious and taught to hate the sin, love the sinner. I believed that gay people were going to hell unless they repented and both became Christians and didn't act on their orientation. It wasn't until college that I met a bunch of wonderful, out queers who somehow wanted to be friends with me. They patiently, compassionately, but firmly confronted by anti-LGBTQ+ attitudes. They didn't let me get away with saying homophobic shit, but they didn't abandon me as a friend, either. I'm so grateful for their influence, their patience, and their courage in helping me change my mind. Without them, I'd probably still be a hateful fart and maybe would have never realized that I'm queer, too. I was never really hostile toward the idea of gay marriage. I never gave it much consideration because I thought it didn't impact me. I never actually knew any gay people, at least not on a personal level. For some ignorant reason, I just didn't think gay couples should be able to marry. That all ended about 10 years ago when I was training a new coworker who happened to be gay. She and I spent an entire week alone in my office, and much of it was just small talk about our lives. She told me the story of how her wife and her met and came to be married. Damned if it wasn't the same story I'd heard from countless straight couples. It was in that week that I realized her situation was no different than mine, other than the needless hurdles she had to face that I didn't. From that week on, I was an ally of the LGBTQ+ community. It was the day the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage. I was sitting by the pool watching my kids play and was legitimately heartbroken because I couldn't take the hate coming out of the conservative Christian community I had grown up and participated in. I thought I just want to love everyone, and I could feel Jesus being like "She's finally got it." That began the journey, which did take a while. I knew I needed to grapple with my issues but kept putting it off. In 2016 my husband told me he could no longer attend any church that supported the rhetoric coming out of a certain political party, and that began a different journey that led us to the Episcopal denomination. The priest decided he was going to get us involved and set about finding out how to do that. He discovered that we played D&D and hooked us that way, and that's when I learned the most. Because our priest and other church friends who played with us were very active in the LGBTQ+ community in our area, especially with teens since they are such an at-risk group. I still don't know as much as I should, but I firmly believe that when God said I love everyone they meant it, and that I should do the same. I know that's not a position held by many in the conservative denominations, but when I kick the bucket and God wants to know what I did with my life, I want to be able to say I tried to love like Jesus did, no matter the cultural mores of my day. Note: I will not debate theology on the interwebs. This is wonderful. I love this. My parents had grown up in very narrow-minded church-oriented families, had each rebelled against it and eventually raised us kids atheists, which I still am. My grandparents later left the Anglican Church. My grandpa had been a reverend, and joined the Christian City Church denomination, where they were both pastors for the past 30 years. So while me and my siblings are atheists, my grandparents injected a heavy dose of religion into our upbringing, some of it toxic, and some of it very, very loving. When a member of my extended family came out as trans and gay, there were family members who didn't speak to us, the pro-LGBTQ part of the family, for many years. My grandma cried, but despite their lack of understanding, it is notable that my grandparents, both pastors and active in the church, never ever cut us off like some other family members did. It was like a Cold War. For years there were the antis and the pros. And my grandparents, who spoke to both sides. I remember a few years before my grandpa died, sitting with him and my lovely trans relative, and I asked Grandpa what he thought of the family schism. He said, "It hurts me more that there are people in our family who can't love each other like Jesus taught. It doesn't matter who you are. Jesus loves you, no matter what." There were other things he said, but that stuck with me. He had been born in the 20s, had been to seminary and been an Anglican clergyman, and even he could see that it doesn't matter who you are or who you love. Jesus wants everyone to get along, love each other, and help each other live a good life. Smile.